A couple of them we've talked about: listening actively, making sure that you understand what the speaker intended, maintaining neutrality. We've talked about that. Important that you be the facilitator of the process, not someone driving their own point of view. You want to ask probing questions. You want to involve all participants. So you want to think about a process that involves everyone and balances the participation so that you don't have silent ones and you don't have those that are speaking too much. We looked at that in the detecting resistance section. Some of the other best practices: recording input where all can see it. If someone says something and you write it up onto a flip chart or padboard, then people feel validated that it was important, and they would be encouraged to input again. You want to stay on topic, of course. You own the process. You need to drive people through that agenda, not flitter from topic to topic. One thing that experienced facilitators do is they obtain buy-in to the process. So in other words, they ask the group, I'd like to try this technique, this facilitated technique. It's been useful in other places. I think it would help us to achieve the goal that we've got here. Could we try this? People may ask questions about the process, but in the end, they will buy into the process. Yes, let's do it. If they are opposed to the process, then of course you don't try and force it on them, and you try and figure out, well, why is it that they don't want to follow this process? You want to maintain a high level of energy and manage conflict in the stakeholder community. We're going to look at that in the next section. And there may be others that you can think of. Take a moment and think about what are the best practices of facilitators. Likewise, there are inappropriate facilitation behaviors, things that facilitators do, inexperienced facilitators do that hurts the process. One of these is interrupting participants. They may say something that triggers something in you, or you want to comment on. Don't interrupt people. Let them finish their thought. Ignoring one or more participants or allowing one or more participants to too much time to talk is, of course, part of having a balanced participation and a process that's fair, that's safe, so that everyone can participate. You want to avoid being defensive. Sometimes critical things are said, sometimes with good reason and sometimes not. We're not there to defend our proposal or what we're doing. We're there to facilitate a process. You do not want to allow conflict to continue or get out of control. We talked about group norms. How you handle conflict is one of those group norms, and in the next section we're going to talk about conflict. Sometimes inexperienced facilitators will change the participants' words. They will try and help them express it differently. You don't want to do that. You're putting an interpretation on it if you change the participants' words. If you want to change the words, you have to get permission. So what you're really saying is, etc. Paraphrase it for them as part of the act of listening. You, of course, do not want to offer personal contributions or content. You're there to facilitate the process, not to offer up content. You are the facilitator. You are not the participant. Sometimes we evaluate the participants' input. It's easy for us to say, oh yeah, that's a good idea. It is, in a way, evaluating the idea. And you want to encourage participation, keep energy level up, but you don't want to get into evaluating, either positively or negatively, the participants' input. And of course, mismanaging the process is something that newer facilitators do all the time. We will look later at the techniques around facilitation and what the process is and what are the steps in each of those processes. We should study those before engaging in the facilitated session to make sure that we understand what the process is. Now, a little exercise for you. You'll find this in the text. We have a list of the behaviors to use, the best practices for facilitation and for facilitators. And on the right, there's a blank column that says how. So what I'd like you to do is thinking about, for the first one, for example, listening actively, how would we do that? How would a facilitator listen actively? And a typical answer might be, we would paraphrase what the speaker said, we would feed it back to them, we would ask, did I get that right? And if the answer is no, then you would ask more questions, get them to say it again, and then repeat it back until both the speaker and the listener are satisfied that they understand the message. Go on and do the others. Think of ways that you could maintain neutrality, ask probing questions, and so on. When you're finished, you'll find in your supplementary material model answers for this. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to complete this chart and then check with the model answers in your text.
So in the facilitation section, we talked about the importance of facilitation in the stakeholder community. The lack of client involvement is one of the most significant reasons for project failure. So if we can facilitate, if we can involve all of those people in FinCo that are in the passive support, passive resistance category, could we bring them on board? Could we help them to buy into the process? Nobody likes it when somebody comes from outside, appearing to have favor with the C-levels, and propose a solution that will make everything better. They need to feel a part of it. They need to be a part of that solution. And they have a lot of expertise. It's their company. It's very difficult to complete an activity diagram, a swim lane diagram, without the user involvement. So you need to do those things. Now, sometimes people say to me, well, you said in the text that the facilitator had to be unbiased and neutral, but we do have a bias. We want to sell our proposal. Let's think about that. In order to sell the process, or to sell the proposal, what do you have to have in place? We did the laying the groundwork section. We talked about those things that had to be in place. Our facilitation is really about getting that groundwork in place. When you look at requirements, do you have a vested interest in how they're prioritized, or is that something that maybe the stakeholder community knows more about than you do? We're helping them to reach their group goals. I've been in so many organizations where the most difficult thing was to get the other people, the stakeholder community, to do their thing, to come to a decision, to prioritize, to generate ideas, to problem solve. Those are important things, and facilitation helps us there. And I do say that we should be unbiased in that. If you have a bias and a particular outcome, the short-term outcome I'm talking now, then that's not facilitation, that's called manipulation.